faithfully conveying value, interpreting global literary treasures. Hi, this is Sally's Book Talk. Today we're exploring The Path of Beauty. This book is an essential primer for understanding traditional Chinese aesthetics. First published in 1979, it quickly became a cultural phenomenon among college students, with multiple reprints totaling hundreds of thousands of copies. Beyond student circles, academic recognition has been equally remarkable. Renowned philosopher Feng Yulan praised, "The Path of Beauty is an encyclopedic masterpiece, spanning Chinese aesthetics, art history, literature, philosophy, and cultural evolution." Cultural scholar Yi Zhangtian remarked, "This work itself qualifies as artistic creation, and rightfully so." The author masterfully combines academic rigor with accessible language, weaving together China's aesthetic development with historical context. After reading this book, familiar cultural artifacts like pottery, bronzeware, sculptures, Tang Song poetry, and Ming Qing novels reveal profound new dimensions of understanding. The author is Li Zehou, China's preeminent philosopher and aesthetician. Internationally renowned, Li holds visiting professorships worldwide and remains the first Chinese scholar included in the Norton Anthology of Theory and Criticism, the definitive Western compendium spanning from Plato to contemporary theorists. Why does Li Zao stand alongside Socrates, Kant, and Hegel in this anthology? Because selectors recognized his original aesthetic system, theories that command Western scholars' respect, representing China's pinnacle achievement in literary theory. He maintained that aesthetics shouldn't remain theoretical, but must engage with practical application. Building momentum towards conclusion, Li pioneered practical approaches to aesthetic study, inspiring a generation's aesthetics fever that fueled broader cultural discourse. This book represents Mr. Li Zihou's definitive synthesis in Chinese aesthetic studies. He observes that Chinese aesthetic preferences underwent 5 major transformations alongside societal changes. The core trajectory of these changes shows the gradual decentralization of aesthetic authority from ancient slave owner elites to Ming Qing urban commoners. Aesthetic discourse power ultimately became democratized. This prolonged evolution birthed countless classical art forms. Let's explore this through 5 historical milestones that shaped aesthetic decentralization. First milestone, the origins of Chinese aesthetics. Primitive societies to Shangzhou periods saw aesthetic authority concentrate within slave owner elites. Religious mysticism dominated this era, best embodied in ritual bronzeware. Before we proceed, let's ponder, what defines beauty? Most have personal interpretations. Natural landscapes, architecture, music, all distinct yet beautiful. Aesthetics specifically studies artistic beauty. So what constitutes artistic beauty? British philosopher Clive Bell proposed beauty as significant form. This means artistic value stems not from form itself, but its encoded cultural significance. Take Ming-Qing imperial porcelain bowls. More than dining utensils, their creation strictly followed imperial protocols and preferences. From material selection to decorative motifs, every detail encoded elite ideologies. These artifacts let us reconstruct historical mentalities and social values. That's artistic significance. How did such aesthetic consciousness originate? Animals lack aesthetic perception. They value utility over beauty. Our ancestors initially shared this purely functional worldview, but over time, primitive human societies gradually developed preferences for uniformity in objects, intentional use of color, along with nature worship and mythological imagination. Thus emerged primitive religions and totemic beliefs. Take Peking Man's cave relics. Archaeologists discovered uniform stone columns, indicating early aesthetic preferences for regularity. Red hematite powder found near remains, and decorated stone beads, animal teeth coated with red pigment, reveal ritual practices. These seemingly casual acts carried groundbreaking cultural and aesthetic significance. They mark Peking man communities developing primitive aesthetic concepts and social consensus. When painting animal teeth red, these ancestors likely felt mystical awe, perhaps toward fire or blood's vitality. Regardless, these non-utilitarian symbolic acts represent aesthetic consciousness emerging. Aesthetic authority then rested with entire tribal communities. Stone beads and animal teeth served as aesthetic mediums. Their significance lay in shared mystical associations with red pigment and uniform shapes. As productivity evolved, aesthetic authorities, bearers, and connotations transformed accordingly. Zehou's methodology examines this interplay between three elements: authority, medium, and cultural significance. Our following analysis adheres to this methodological framework. With social stratification into slaves and slave owners came new aesthetic paradigms. Slave-owning elites monopolized cultural production, shaping art to reflect their dominance. During Shang Dynasty and early Western Zhou, warfare and consolidated rule intensified religious atmosphere. Historical records indicate Shang's divination practices and ancestor worship permeated all social spheres. These cultural elements naturally manifested in artistic creations, most notably Shang Dynasty bronzeware. Bronze artifacts remain the most prized cultural relics, each existing piece being a museum's crown jewel. The most famous example is the iconic Simuwu Ding cauldron. Commissioned by a Shang king for ancestral worship, it embodies religious and cultural significance. Let's clarify a misconception. Ancient craftsmanship wasn't primitive individual work. Bronze casting required entire societal coordination. A single piece might demand collaboration from 200 to 300 specialized artisans. These royal-bound slave artisans sometimes worked generations to complete one masterpiece. The complexity and precision of their techniques still astonish modern observers. Kings doubled as high priests, controlling religious discourse. The Simuwu Ding features terrifying Taoti motifs, religious symbols cast in bronze. What meaning did these patterns hold? Taoti represented divine terror, humanity's perception of gods in that era. Ancient spiritual concepts differed radically from later periods. Later deities acquired humanized benevolence and approachability. Primordial fears of nature's mysteries and war's brutality created collective societal anxiety. Zehou describes this aesthetic as ferocious beauty, terrifying divine representations. This religious fervor phase occurred across ancient civilizations globally. Egyptian, Babylonian, and Indian civilizations all underwent similar stages of divine obsession. China's uniqueness lies in its early pivot to rationality. Before complete mythos formation, this fundamentally shaped Chinese culture's unique developmental trajectory. Which brings us to our second historical milestone. From late spring-autumn to Han Dynasty, aesthetic authority consolidated further as Confucian-Taoist rational aesthetics emerged, birthing literary forms like Shijing, Chuxi, and Hanfu. During late spring and autumn periods warfare, schools like Confucianism, Taoism, and Mohism sought rational solutions beyond divine worship. Confucianism and Taoism eventually dominated intellectual discourse. The Book of Songs became Confucian rational aesthetics' most influential manifestation. Originally compiled from religious hymns and ritual texts, most poems served as sacrificial invocations. Shiji records Confucius editing 3,000 poems down to 305 morally appropriate pieces. Zehou argues this editorial process systematically purged religious content, steering Chinese aesthetics toward rationalism. Xi Jing established Fu Bi Xing techniques, the golden rules followed by even Li Bai and Du Fu. Meanwhile, Taoist Wu philosophy from La Zhuang shaped alternative aesthetic sensibilities. Unlike Confucian dismissal of mysticism, Taoism rationally engaged with cosmic forces through concepts like Tao. Zhuangzi's mythological imagery, Kunpeng rockfish, formless Hundun, expresses harmony with nature rather than religious terror. This philosophy deeply influenced Chu culture, operating outside Confucian orthodoxy. Li Zehou positions Kuo Yuan's Chu Si as embodying this alternative aesthetic tradition. Thus, we see Chu Si and Shi Jing embody radically different aesthetics, the latter avoiding supernatural themes, the former embracing them. Mountain spirits, river deities, and cosmic mythology permeate Chusi, creating mystical romanticism. Han Dynasty rulers from Chu regions mainstreamed this mythopoetic aesthetic. Confucian Taoist synthesis dominated artistic expression through Three Kingdoms period. Han Fu poetry, using Fu rhetorical device, became this synthesis primary medium. Its characteristics, celebrating human achievements like imperial palaces and grand hunts, yet interwoven with Zhuangzi's fantastical imagery, creating monumental dreamscapes. Sima Shangru epitomized this style during Western Han. His Rhapsody on the Imperial Park glorifies imperial grandeur without divine references, affirming human capability. Such works typified Han Fu's celebration of human achievement. Later examples include Ban Gu's Two Capitals Rhapsody and Zhang Heng's Western Capital Rhapsody. Though these human achievements mainly glorified imperial power, this reveals aesthetic authority remained monarchic prerogative.